The seventh day. Dun dun dun. I'm kidding. Consciousness. The row of monitors radiated a pale light. The row of monitors radiated a pale light. I sank into the armchair before the panel and crossed my legs atop the console. There was an image pause on the computer's display. The final shot of my body's rampage through the living area on the night of 15th. The other monitors displayed the current going-ons in each of the other rooms. The other three were all in the bedrooms. Is this where he's going to realize something? I hope so. Itsumi was sitting on a chair, gazing at the photos of her babies. Uni was asleep in his bed. Tori was crouching in a corner of her room, silently gazing at the floor. All three of them seemed perfectly fine. I returned my gaze to the display before me. You didn't check the other rooms. Back at the paused footage, I closed the playback screen and opened the pullback menu. A list of the files stored in the database appeared. Among them, records of every single event that had occurred at Sphere from the January 11th to January 16th, 2012. That's right, I was here for one reason and one reason only, to check the video data. Just what had happened at Sphere while my consciousness was away from my body. If I looked through all the footage, then I'd discover the answer right away, that's what I thought. I began to pore over the vast amount of data. Although with that said, I'd never catch up if I played it back in real time. The total length of the footage I had to watch was approximately 100 hours. I couldn't help but... Wait, why is that a tip? Why is that a tip? The portion analyzes the record beginning at the moment of my fall. Oh, it's just explaining how much footage, like what footage it begins and stuff like that. I couldn't help but fast forward through everything that didn't interest me, and eventually my analysis caught up to where I was right now. 10 hours had passed since I'd settled into this chair. Wait, how much? 10 hours. I had a throbbing ache just behind my eyes from staring at low-resolution footage for just such a long time. Oh, he's sitting there for 10 hours, wow. I had a big sigh and rubbed the inner corners of my eyes with my fingers. Present time, 10:37 AM. The date had changed to January 17th. What was Fuyukawa's consciousness doing while in my body? How did the other three act while I wasn't there? It'd be fine if I clarified these mysteries to some extent, but there were still many things I didn't know. Over 2 hours remained until the next transfer. I extracted the most important scenes and replayed the footage once again. Wednesday, January 11th. Time, 4:15. My room. Sumi entered, pulling my snow-covered body inside. She removed my coat, which was soaked through and clinging to me. With a bath towel she'd brought from somewhere, she kindly wiped down my hair and face. She then dragged my body still unconscious to the bed and lay down. Took my pulse, checked my pupils, and placed her palm against my brow to check for a fever. She covered me with a blanket, then Itsumi left the room. For a while after that, my body continued sleeping without the slightest tremor. Time, 8:02 PM. Location of my room, the room's window began to shake violently as though hit by a sudden squall. The tremors began to settle, and at the same time, the body lying on the bed got up. Its face was warped in agony. Itsumi appeared in the room again and gently coaxed the body back into the bed. This is when Cocoro was in control, I think. Two of them were having a conversation about something. The recording had no sound. Thus, I didn't know what they were talking about. It went without saying that the only other person there besides Itsumi was me. But it looked like me, but I don't remember talking to Itsumi like this. Which meant that Cocoro's consciousness had entered my body. This was how the first transfer occurred. The time was 8:02 PM. Sphere had jumped to the Mount Cocoro on January 11, 2011. In exchange, a circle with a radius of 110 meters with the shelter cabin at its core arrived at the Awasagi Island at 2012. At that moment, my consciousness, which remained at Awasagi Island, had entered Cocoro's body. Therefore, the footage showed Sphere after it jumped to the Mount Cocoro at 2011. That was probably why the window shook just before the transfer. The atmospheric pressure inside the Sphere was high, while Mount Cocoro was much lower, so the window was hit by air pressure at both sides. Eventually, the air managed to escape from the institution through a crack somewhere, and the interior equalized with the exterior pressure. By the way, there was one other thing that bothered me. If my current reasoning regarding the atmospheric pressure was correct, then how could have I overlooked something that big before? Even if my consciousness was always at Awasagi Island, when I transferred into Cocoro's body and returned to my own, I should have noticed pain in my ears, or heard the sound of the draft caused by the escaping air. But I don't remember feeling something that out of place even once. Why was that? Was it because I never paid attention to such a trivial change in the chaos that followed a transfer? Something was strange. I suddenly felt a sense of discontent. All kinds of thoughts whirled through my head. Like that, I dishonestly kept viewing the footage. It's because you never went to the mountains area, which means the pressure never changed for you, isn't that it? My body Cocoro left the room. It met Hattori in the dining area and then discovered Uni in a supposedly empty room. My body received a mirror from Uni, it looked into the mirror and then began muttering something, opened its mouth wide, while tossing its head wildly as if screaming. My body began to get angry, building into a rage. Tsumi appeared in the room with sedative, which she injected into me. My body crumpled on the spot. In a mobile container made out of flesh, Uni and Tsumi carried it into my room. Time 9:08. Location my room. Time began to stir as it lay on my bed. As it got to its feet and stood in the middle of the room, looking around, it began to grip its body, and an expression of relief crossed its face. That's me. The image I'm shown there was me in both body and consciousness. The second transfer, this time it was 9:08. What was about to happen after this had already been carved into my memory. Conversation with Uni, Hattori, running to the basement storeroom as me running after her. Everything was recorded there, just so I remembered it. There was no need to confirm what I already knew. I fast-forwarded through the footage and went on to the next scene. Time 10:24. Location, dining area. The 3 cups slipped out of my fingers. They shattered. Sound must have surprised it as my body twitched, gazed obliviously at the fragments strewn across the floor. Tsumi came up behind me. I turned around. No, that wasn't me. It was Cocoro. No memory of this encounter, so it had to be her. Third transfer occurred. Afterwards, my body Cocoro exchanged a few words with Tsumi and Uni before heading to its own bathroom. There wasn't any cameras in there, it was a bathroom after all. I don't know what's happened inside. There weren't any especially important scenes around there, so I jumped ahead. It's like, whoa my god, I got something between my legs. I didn't have the time to inspect anything. However, I couldn't overlook the scene that happened next. 10:24, I'm 10:45. Oh, this is the blackout area. Location of Tori's room. My body received the pills from Itsumi. Tori was in the bed, looking tired. Uni suddenly appeared before the camera. After exchanging a few words, my body held Uni close, then left the room with him. 10:28, my room, and then 10:48. My body took the pills, then went into the bathroom. Finally, I was entranced by the display, completely absorbed. From the footage on screen, it disappeared from view. Afterwards, it was just the empty room. 11:19, my room. Someone's back appeared at the edge of the frame. It was Hattori. Came into the room and suddenly began to act very odd. She ran but fell down after only 2 or 3 steps, and once she righted herself, she took only a few more before falling over backwards. After repeating this several times, she planted herself on the floor. Her eyes were trained on the refrigerator. She suddenly clapped her hands together and laughed. Then she stood up, peeled the blanket off her bed, and started swinging it around widely. But her foot got caught and she fell down again. The momentum caused the blanket to carry her to the floor with it, and where it fell, covered her face. After struggling underneath it for a bit, she threw it off the side. When she finally turned around the camera, she was wearing a vacant expression. Her eyes darted around the room. Then she opened her mouth as wide as it would go, while curling her hands into fists. Just like that, she went limp and fell into the bed. This is the second time I've seen the footage and it still left me speechless. What exactly was she trying to do? Her strange movements continued for another 11 minutes. Did she take the hallucinogenic things? Is that what happened? Time 11:30. My room. Tori's back arched. She collapsed to the floor and her whole body went rigid. For several seconds she laid there completely still, her back still curved. And just as quickly she suddenly sat bolt upright. I'm also surprised he didn't comment on the fact that Tori wrote down on a piece of paper when first meeting Kuroko. I would have expected he noticed that. It's like, why was she writing on a piece of paper? Doesn't she usually talk? I thought that would be how we came to the assumption, but I guess he just didn't notice. She pressed her back flat against the wall, arms outstretched, and crushed and wrapped them around her knees. She looked around the room with frightened expression on her face. I could see her fingers trembling. Deep wrinkles etched themselves into her brow, and her eyes restlessly scanned the room. 3 minutes later, Hattori timidly stood up and rushed for the door. She fled the room, and for a while after that, all the cameras recorded was an empty room. 11:37, my room. My body came out through the bathroom door, walking unsteadily. My entire body was dripping wet. Feeling along the wall to support herself, it shambled forward, leaving puddles of water behind with every step. I remember taking those unsteady steps. After taking the Zectamin, my control over my own body weakened. This meant at the moment the display was showing the real me. The timing of the transfer was most like the same as Hattori, so 11:30. This is the 4th transfer, 2 round trips had occurred. The me in the recording was exhausted, and with the last of my strength somehow made it to the bed. Passed out, my eyes snapped. After that I slept until 6:30 in the morning, and then the video died off the 11th. There was a number of things that had interested me, but for now I'll let them be. I could organize my thoughts later. Suited with the files from the 12th. Most important event occurring on this day was of course my arm being stabbed. I concentrated, narrowing my focus, and pressed fast forward. 5:30 PM, my room. Camera had captured Itsumi's image. The window trembled in the strong wind. Itsumi was holding onto my arm. She began conversing with my body. Unease stole over Itsumi's body, and then, at the moment, the white noise and static began to fill the screen, and the footage of the room began to waver. That wavering increased further until I could no longer make out anything on the screen. So it probably wasn't an earthquake that happened, by the way, during this moment. It was probably a huge snowstorm that happened. The image warped, the picture blurred. I rewound and played the scene back in slow motion and saw my body and Itsumi holding each other, crouched on the floor. An earthquake. Now that I think about it, Cocoro had written a message like that to me. An earthquake occurred at Sphere. Because of that, the breaker was tripped and a blackout occurred. It's fixed now. Just like in her message, the screen suddenly went pitch black. It wasn't just the lights either. Complete blackout. The file itself was empty with nothing recorded in it. The cameras had probably stopped working because of the power failure. A sequence of utter darkness that could hardly be called footage continued for several minutes. Eventually the grainy particles out screen began to fire across the display. As it washed down, the image on the screen began completely clear. The post-blackout sphere appeared on the screen. It's 7:10 PM, my room. The lights returned and my body squinted. Blood was gushing from its left arm. Sumi was there as well. She took one look at the bleeding arm and fell into obvious dismay. This goes without saying, but the me there at the moment wasn't me. One move of my body was Cocoro consciousness even during the earthquake. Although what that said, it wasn't as if the images from before, and those appearing right now, were continuous. I see the shadowy figure in the darkness of the blackout and a knife grasping at its right hand. Going by this, between 5:30 and 7:10 Cocoro and I had switched places with each other twice, one round trip. That reminds me, at what time was my left arm injured anyway? By the time my consciousness returned to Sphere, my arm already bore a deep wound. In other words, the one control of my body when I was stabbed wasn't me but Cocoro. Keeping this in mind, it would mean that the attack took place after the power failure, but before the next transfer occurred. However, the blackout had prevented the crucial scene from being recorded. It was the same no matter how many times I tried playing it back. Nothing new jumped out at me from the recording. I gave up and closed the files for the 12th. Friday, January 13th. I recall that things were relatively calm on that day. By relatively, I meant compared to the other days. My body didn't experience any threats to its life, nor did anyone attacking me. Therefore, there wasn't any need to double-check the files. Skipped over that day and moved on to the 14th. January 14th, Saturday. This is the day I met Enomoto Naoya. I listened to him talk about the space-time transfer and then he nearly killed me. However, I transferred again the moment before it happened, and once I returned, it was Enomoto who lay dead, not me. Nothing that occurred prior to that moment was very important. Just what had happened down in the basement storeroom. That was the only thing that bothered me. I extracted the scene of the struggle with Enomoto and played it back. 6:11 PM, basement storeroom. Darkness, a blank screen. But unlike the earthquake several days ago, this time the data itself had been properly recorded. The emergency lights illuminated the area. Within the dimness on the screen, I saw human shadows writher. But because of that, I couldn't tell what was happening. I raised the brightness of the footage and increased the color saturation and tone at the same time, which raised the contrast considerably. That did it. The contours of the objects on the screen became fantastically clear. Only the surface that the light managed to hit stood out, but I had no trouble distinguishing human fingers in the image. The display showed Enomoto and me grappling with each other hand to hand. Enomoto was straddling my body, pressing hard on my nose and mouth with both hands. I had no memory of this. In other words, the transfer had already occurred by this time. My body struggled violently, thrashing its arms and legs, and caught Enomoto in the chin with a strong right hook. Enomoto staggered. My body seized the chance to escape Enomoto's hold. After that, a long flight assured. With Cocoro's consciousness controlling it, my body left the building once and re-entered through the window of my room. I rushed over to the door and suddenly looked up as though surprised. Timidly I left the room, paced through the dining hall, and then once again descended the stairs to the basement. As though it had been waiting for me, Enomoto's hand shot out and made contact with my shoulder. My body fell. Enomoto sprang after it. His hand still grasped the palely glinting knife. Enomoto inverted the knife, swung it down right at my throat. At that moment, Enomoto disappeared from the screen. For a moment, I didn't know what was happening. I rewound, then played the video back in slow motion. When I did, I saw Satoru tear across the screen with the speed of a gale, taking down Enomoto with a perfectly aimed body blow. Why did Hattori do that? This wasn't the first time I'd seen the image, but I still couldn't help but stare at it in shock. Cocoro and I had been saved by Hattori. I hadn't heard a peep out of either Cocoro or Hattori to that effect. As I thought that, the event on screen was still rushing by. I returned the playback setting to normal speed and fixed my eyes on the screen. Enomoto got to his feet and stared into the darkness. He appeared to be frantically searching for something. Looking closely, I could tell that the knife had disappeared from his hand. He must have dropped it the moment he fell. The knife was now in my hand. My left hand. It was my left hand that gripped the knife. Enomoto shook his head in disbelief as he continued to survey the occluding darkness. On faltering steps, my body rushed towards him from behind. It didn't make any attempt to conceal itself, but neither did it scream out or make any threatening movements. It was almost like a kitten that reacted to anything that moved, jumping around innocently and finally pouncing. The sound of footsteps seemed to have finally reached Enomoto's ears, and he suddenly turned around. My body aimed for its chest and rushed forward to cling to it, just like a kitten frolicking playfully. Their two bodies overlapped as they flew through the air, drawing a slow parabola in their fall. Right after that, the display went white. The picture had jumped because the brightness was too high. I cleared all of the adjustments that I made to the footage, then I rewound a bit and played it back again. In the ceiling of the dim storeroom, after flickering several times, the lights came back on and flooded the room. Uni was the one responsible for that. Lowering his finger from the switch, he turned around and gulped. He pressed a hand over his mouth as his eyes as round as saucers, an expression of terror. I wouldn't blame him. Following the direction of Uni's stare, I saw Enomoto's bloody corpse crumpled on the floor. Yesterday, Uni had said to me, "This goes way beyond just thinking. I saw it with my own eyes. You were laughing as you stabbed that man over and over again. Even you must have known he was already dead. But you just kept on stabbing him. Butchered his corpse, acting like it was all a game to you, didn't you?" As to verify Uni's words, the scream all too clearly showed an image of me toying with the corpse. I'm laughing, it's true. Straddling Enomoto, I slashed him over and over again with the knife I gripped in both hands, digging chunks of flesh from his chest, piercing right through his belly. As if scribbling randomly on a piece of paper, I ran the knife all over the body. Soundlessly, the knife was drawn into the lifeless stab of meat. With a foolish smile of utter ecstasy on my face, I was wholeheartedly enjoying the sensation of the knife sinking into the meat. Enomoto was still, his clouded eyes fixed on the empty sky above him, air above him. With every thrust of my knife, more blood foamed out of his mouth, and nostrils ran off into the floor. I endlessly persisted in this terrible game, doing it over and over and over again. I continued moving my hands across the cold slab of meat. No, that's not it. I suddenly shook my own head and came to my senses. The person being projected here wasn't me, it was Cocoro. However, after having seen it so plainly, I could no longer think of it as just an illusion. What if the one who actually killed me wasn't Cocoro, but actually me? Had I completely lost myself without even realizing it, and fallen to such a level of barbarism? What? Barbarism. Yeah, it's barbarian, but yeah. In reality, the person there on screen couldn't be anyone but me. Using common sense, the most obvious explanation for this gruesome murder was that I was the culprit. That's wrong. I unconsciously looked away. This isn't me. It isn't me. It isn't me. I muttered those words again and again, trying to convince myself. By the time I lifted my head back up, the next scene had begun to unfold. My body got up from Enomoto. I stared at the blood-drenched knife as though it was something mysterious. Right there, next to her, was Hattori. She was crouching in the puddle of blood, splashing around playfully in it. The blood flew up as splashes. It fell back at the red rain. The falling raindrops disappeared back into the puddle, creating ripples before they vanished. As she watched them, Hattori's face broke into a huge, gleeful smile. She was laughing again. This had already exceeded the limits of my understanding. I stuttered violently as though suddenly cold. It was madness. No, this is Sparta. If this wasn't an act committed by a madman, then what was it? I couldn't believe that a human was capable of this. The beings on screen were just a pair of demons who'd assumed human form were amusing themselves with a little while with this. I couldn't see it any other way. Time 7:17 p.m. Basement storeroom. On screen I suddenly raised my head and looked around the room. Noticed a knife in my left hand. An expression of shock and deep disturbance. As I saw it, every muscle in my jaw stiffened and began twitching conversely. Placed my hand against my chest in an attempt to return my breathing to normal. Yes, a clear and obvious chance. Transfer, space-time transfer had occurred. I could clearly remember these events. For a while, the me on screen stood staring at the corpse, immobile as a cast-off shell of my actual self. The corner of the screen contained a digital timestamp. The indicator for seconds was still moving, but besides that, everything was still, and then 7:31, a black shadow across the screen. Determined to catch it and reveal its true identity, this time I tried viewing the footage from another angle. What I saw projected was Satoru, now dyed the vivid red of fresh blood. She toyed with the knife she held in both hands. She'd stolen it from me. Satoru was facing me, and we were having a conversation. Only her lips moved in the silence of the frame. Hey Satoru, which do you prefer? Which one? I mean, to stab or be stabbed. Which do you prefer? I couldn't hear her voice, but I remember those words all too well. If I remembered correctly, my consciousness should jump to the shelter cabin right after this. And just as expected, there was a change in the footage. 7:34, basement storeroom. Saw my body react, giving a quick shiver, just like it had 17 minutes before. Shock and disturbance registered on its face. When it noticed Enomoto's dead body, it covered its mouth with its hands as though fighting back nausea. Something startled it and it raised its head. Tori was standing right before its eyes. Tori's eyes were blank. She blinked several times as though playing dumb. Eventually she noticed the abnormality and looked down at her own body and at the knife in her hands. Confused, Tori let go of the knife. She was frightened, as if she couldn't understand what she'd just done. The pallor that came over her face spelled it out clearly. She shook her head a number of times as though to deny it. As though begging for help, she reached her hand out to my body and began to draw nearer. The one there on screen right now wasn't the Tori I knew. Or Tori spoke those suspicious words, were idly toying with the knife, and the Tori desperately seeking help, with her face warped in fear. Two of them were clearly different people. The shadow of Inabushi Kaiko immediately arose in my mind. One is Inabushi and the other is a Tori. Is that how it is? On top of that, the timing of her personality change lined up with that of the space-time transfers. It can't be. Suffocating uneasiness overcame me. I'd reached one conclusion, but it was still too soon. Still wasn't enough evidence. Just now Itsami was joining them on screen, and the scene soon turned into a brawl. Tori began running amok, my body cried out while it did its best to hold her back, soon me brandishing the knife, and with that face of a demon she attacked. Uni was crouched nearby with blood flowing from a wound on its forehead. I'd reached out a limit. Forcing myself to look straight ahead, I firmly closed the file as if to erase it. The behavior of lunatics who cut their own human hearts had shaken me to my very core. Somber air seemed to surround me. Unable to stand it, I stood up from the console and began walking around the dimly lit room. There was a coffee maker in the corner. Hoping for the change of pace, I swiftly made some coffee, poured into a cup and gulped it down. It was completely tasteless to me, but it may have felt that way because the cup was the same one Enomoto had. Even so, I was somehow able to calm myself down. I placed the empty cup on top of the console and pulled up the last of the recordings, the files from January 15. I'd already seen everything in here once, but it was certainly possible that I had overlooked something. I couldn't leave without making sure. After all, this was the day I drank the DMT in the inhibitor. January 15th, time 7:43. Okay, dining area? When I asked her about the DMT inhibitor, Tori said that maybe I'd drunk it myself. Just as she'd said, the recording showed that as well. When my body began to doze off, it wandered into the dining area, rubbing its eyes. Its steps were shaky like sleepwalkers. Its body wavering to the left and right, just barely managing to reach the table. There were two bottles under the table. Bottles containing the DMT and the inhibitor. My body picked up the bottles, staring at them with great interest. And then, I have no idea what it was thinking, but it suddenly drained the contents of both bottles in a few gulps, without anyone forcing it or leading it on. My body drank both bottles of medicine on its own without the slightest apparent hesitation. I couldn't think of its actions as anything but a gravely foolish, snap decision. The effects of the drug immediately began to show. Just 1 minute after that, my body fell to its knees and dropped heavily to the floor, its head slowly bowing like an ear of ice. My forehead went to the floor, my arms were thrown out haphazardly to either side. The next transfer probably occurred right after this. There was no mistake. My memory from the 15th began with me, like this, after all. After I was trying to get up after the transfer, still helpless to move, I fell face first. One who nursed me back to help was Isumi. Isumi carried me back to my room and administered an antidote, contacted the drug. From then on until the afternoon, I lay on my own bed, sound asleep. Symbolic. And there ends my analysis. There were many mysteries still remaining, but for now, let's summarize everything I've gathered. How did I almost drown in my bathtub? It was my body's fault. My body took those sleeping pills in its own violation and entered the bathroom. Nobody actually plunged my unconscious body into the bathtub. Hattori turned out to be responsible for the door slam I heard, but she was unrelated to the incident. She never took a single step into the bathroom. The same goes for everyone else. At the time in question, only my body was in the room. If I had to accuse someone of trying to drown me, then the only candidate was myself. Next, who killed Enomoto? No need to repeat the ad nauseum. Every particular of the massacre who was recorded on the video, it was my body. Lastly, why did my body ingest the DMT inhibitor? No need to explain that, my body was the culprit once again. Other people had absolutely nothing to do with it. Those are the 3 points I proved anew. Proved isn't quite the correct word, I should probably say that I confirmed my speculations. My body was responsible for everything in a way I had almost expected it. There was no camera set on the rooftop, so I couldn't find anything about the incident on the clock tower. The same could be said about the wound in my left arm. No data was saved during that time. But my other findings were more than enough. From the information I unearthed, I'd found the answer. So, to summarize, the criminal out to kill me is... me. Cocoro and I are the only ones who can control this body, but in the scene showing Enomoto's death, Fuyukawa Cocoro would never commit such a brutal murder. I can confidently declare that she isn't the one who's capable of such things. Moreover, she has a strong alibi. I can't speak in detail about it here, but anyway, it's impossible for Cocoro to have committed the crime, and this leads to us the inevitably conclusion that the culprit could only be the other possibility. In other words, the culprit's me. It's me, yet it's the only possibility I can think of. My memory still hasn't returned. If we assume the cause is mental, then it means something's wrong with my mind. Just like Itsumi said, maybe I really do suffer from DID. And while suffering from DID, I was dragged into the transference phenomenon, thus I misunderstood. Till now I was convinced I had taken the role of the victim, but I was wrong. I am the victim, and also the assailant. Unbeknownst to even me. Because of the mental disorder I completely unrelated to the transference phenomenon, I have created another personality within myself. That other personality must have been the culprit. He schemed to injure my body and grotesquely kill Enomoto. The records tell me everything. It's sad, but I have to face up to it. I won't waver anymore. I won't let myself be restrained by feelings and obligations any longer. I closed my eyes, took a heavy breath, and left that musty room. That does make sense, though. Because... I want to see what the other two options are, but I do think it's me that's doing it. Because there's the transference when Cocoro and Satoru mix, but what about the times where there's like the red screen and everything? It could be that there's a second personality, and those red screens is basically, oh, the second personality's in effect, so you can't actually take over yet. That could be possible. Alright, I want to go back, and I want to see what happens when I choose the other choices. Okay, so Cocoro. It's Cocoro. Cocoro's consciousness tried to injure my body. It's the only possibility I can think of. After all, while I'm cut off from my body, she's the only one controlling it. I don't know her motives. As Hattori said, maybe she really is suicidal, and judging from the way she murdered Enomoto, I think one of her screws came loose. A crime during a moment of fitful insanity. Anyway, it was Cocoro's consciousness all along. The records tell me everything. It's sad, but I have to face up to it. I won't waver anymore. I won't let myself be restrained by feelings and obligations any longer. I closed my eyes, took a heavy breath, and left the musty room. Okay. So that goes the third eye as well. So then, what about neither? It's neither of us. Of course, I wasn't assuming either Hattori nor Uni, not even Enomoto. It was someone else. Another unknown person, unpersonality sphere. Traces of their passage exist, at least. Now let's follow the road of my reasoning. First, judging from the records, Goes without saying that Tatsumi, Hattori, Yuri, and Emoto are all unrelated to the events. Next is Cocoro, but I'll rule her out of the suspect list. Why? Because she has a strong alibi. Especially in the case of Enomoto's murder occurring on the 14th, the times simply don't add up. Times, yes, the times. There's something strange about the times displayed on the pictures. By strange, I mean that generally speaking, that kind of thing happened at the time is ridiculous. The strange time I'm referring to are January 14th. Was the first... no. 6/11 to something. The former is the time my body possessed by Kuroko was attacked by Enomoto in the storehouse. On the other hand, the later is the time I, who had returned to my original body, due to a transfer, discovered Enomoto's corpse. Of course, those aren't the only times that happen to bother me. There are plenty of other spots, but it's not worth listing them all. Let's give another example. Let's go back to January 11th. The following times are also strange. January 11th. Sorry, I need to think about this. January 11th. Cocoro and I traded bodies for the first time. She and I then woke up at Sphere and at the shelter cabin respectively. 908 is when the second transference happened, returning my consciousness to Sphere. To be more accurate, it's Sphere that returned to Osagi Island from Mount Akuro. Incidentally, these two instances, there's something strange about them. Let's start thinking about what happened on the 14th from 6/11 to 7/17, interval of 66 minutes. I was at the shelter cabin then, anxious about my body being controlled by Cocoro. I was worried sick about her, wondering if she'd managed to run away from Enomoto. See, it's strange, weird even then. Wasn't I only allowed to stay at the shelter cabin for 33 minutes? Of course, the same goes for Cocoro. She can only stay there at Sphere for 33 minutes. In spite of that, the camera recorded my body moving around without my consciousness for a good 66 minutes. It's certainly not a problem with the time counter on screen. The records really are 66 minutes long. The major point here is that the statement Cocoro can only stay at Sphere for 33 minutes is irrefutable. We measured it several times, so I have no doubts about this. Which means, since Cocoro was already at Sphere at 6/11, her consciousness separated from my body at 33 minutes after 6:44 at the latest. But then, from 6:44 to 7:17, who the hell was controlling my body? Let's examine the records once again. 6:44 on the 14th is shown to be the moment Enomoto was swinging the knife, aiming at my throat. Right after it, Hattori rams right into Enomoto, causing him to drop the knife, which means that Enomoto's murder, as well as the overblown damage to his body, took place sometime between 6:44 and 7:17. Personality and control of my body during that time gap is the culprit. So with that, Fuyukawa Cocoro has a reasonable alibi. She can only be at Sphere for 33 minutes, and Enomoto died at 33 minutes time limit. After a 33 minutes time limit. Therefore, it's impossible for Cocoro to be the criminal. Fuyukawa Cocoro is innocent. The same considerations apply to the events on the 11th from 8:02 to 9:08. 8:02, Cocoro was transported to Sphere. 33 minutes after that, at 8:35, her consciousness ought to have left her body. My body. As a matter of fact, I woke up at Sphere at 9:08. From 8:35 to 9:08, again, there's a gap. Thinking about it carefully, this mysterious time lag has accompanied every transfer up until now. 10:24 on the 11th, for example. At Sphere, have been transported to Mount Sakura during the third transfer. Cocoro jumped, surprised by the sound of the breaking cups. And then at 11:30, a fourth transfer occurred and I regained consciousness in the bathtub. There were no cameras in the bathroom, but there was one in my room. I know the fourth transfer occurred at 11:30 because the camera inside the room recorded Hattori's sudden metamorphosis. I'll touch on the subject of Hattori later. The third at 10:24, the fourth at 11:30. Again, a 66 minute in between. If we assume Cocoro was in control for half that time, then what about the other half? Yes, I thought a 33 minute gap is also present there. Is there any further explanation required? Gap always tags along with our transfers. Nevertheless, my body definitely isn't empty during the remaining 33 minutes. It was very clear that the other personality slips into it. Third personality. I can't for the life of me guess who they were, but since the third personality exists, then I can deduce the following. There are... Wait, what? I can't for the life of me guess who they are, but since the third personality exists, there are 3 exchange points? Yeah. There are 3 exchange points. We never transfer back and forth between 2 points. We kept turning round and round between 3. If not, then I can't explain how the third personality intervened between me and Cocoro. The phenomenon we were dragged into is space-time transfer. An area at a point in time completely changes places with another area at another point in time. Personality exchange is all about each consciousness simply remaining tied to a fixed place and picking the empty container that comes around. If we assume that another personality exists based on this model, then it'd be logical to think about that the transfers do not occur between 2 points but 3. When explained in order, it'd be like this. Before that, let's define a recurrent concept. From now on, I'll refer to the third personality shrouded in mystery as Alpha, I guess. An alias and an alias. An elaborative to call the third personality. Oh, it's alias, okay. Just as my name is Yukidoh and Cocoro's name is Cocoro, I decided the name of the third personality is alias. Furthermore, to simplify things, I'll make use of the following abbreviations. K's body, Cocoro's consciousness is Cocoro, the third body is Alpha, Alpha's consciousness, the third body is Alpha's body, Alpha's consciousness is Alpha, alias. The space contained in the sphere of radius, 110 centimeters on a sphere is sphere area, and the other one's shelter cabin area. Third location, which isn't sphere, on the shelter near the shelter cabin, equals third location. The space continued in the sphere of radius 110 centimeters on the third location is the third area. The region surrounding the third area, the third region, this is a temporary name that acts as the counterpart of Osagi Island, Mount Cocoro. The fact that our time in each area being teleported is restricted to 33 minutes, a 33-minute rule. Let's begin. Just what kind of phenomenon is this annoying space-time transfer? Let's start off with removing the time jump from the equation and focusing on the space transfer. Judging from the records, my body is used by us 3 in the following order. Me, Cocoro, Alpha, me, Cocoro, Alpha. I'm gonna call it Alpha because whatever. Simply said, my body after being operated by me is operated by Cocoro, then operated by Alpha. Then operated by me, operated by Cocoro, operated by Alpha, and so on. Of course, the same kind of thing happens to K's body and Alpha's body. This time, let's use the point of view of my consciousness and see how I move between each body. My consciousness is always, no matter what, at Osagi Island. My bound consciousness crawls into an empty container, a body, existing in the area currently on Osagi Island. If you turn over the above sequence, you get my body, Alpha's body, K's body, my body, Alpha's body, K's body. Let's rephrase it to make it easier to follow. In short, my consciousness transfers from my body to Alpha's body, then K's body. Then to my body to Alpha's body to K's body, and so on. Yeah, that's not it. It's 2 exchange, but it's just there's 2 personalities in one of the places, and there's one in the other. Needless to say, Cocoro and Alpha's alias transfer in the same order. The transitions all come down to this. When my consciousness is in A's body, Cocoro is in my body, and Alpha is in K's body. When my consciousness is in K's body, Cocoro is in Alpha's, and A's in... so yeah. The area teleported as follows. When the sphere area is in Mount Cocoro, the shelter cabin area in the third region, and the third area is transported to Osagi Island. When the sphere area is in the third region, the shelter cabin area is in Osagi Island, and the third area is transported to Mount Cocoro. When the sphere area is back to Osagi Island, the shelter cabin area is in Mount Cocoro, and the third area returns to the third region. 3 consciousnesses and 3 bodies, 3 regions and 3 areas are tossed around like this. By the way, if you apply the 33-minute rule to this is what you get. The time my consciousness controls Alpha's body, the time Cocoro controls my body, equals the time Alpha controls K's body, 33 minutes. The time my consciousness controls Cocoro's body, the time Cocoro controls Alpha. This is everything I've discovered about the space-time transference. So the 33-minute time gap's generated. But there's still something missing. There's still 4 obscure points. Mystery number 1. I didn't notice the existence of a third area because I believe what Cocoro had written down. This is what I messaged it on the 12th. 107 to 140, 603 to 636, 733. Contrast, there are times I noted down. 107 to 140, 603, something, 733. Times of Cocoro's message and the ones I measured match perfectly. That's why I was under the wrong impression. When I'm at the shelter cabin, Cocoro is at Sphere, but that wasn't the case. It was actually always when I'm at the shelter cabin, Cocoro is in the third area. Then, when was Cocoro at Sphere? I was in the third area at the time, which means the list of times either Cocoro's or mine is incorrect. The incorrect one is Cocoro's. How do I know this? When I compare them to the times displayed on the records, it becomes pretty obvious. According to the videos, they are the correct times. 12:34, transferred to Sphere. 5:30, obviously there are no cameras in the shelter cabin, therefore I can only find the times Cocoro transferred to Sphere. But that's enough. Let's compare them with the times it transfers. Time Cocoro wrote is 1:07 and 6:03. The actual times are 12:35, 4, and 5:30. Systematic error. Times recorded on the message are off by 33 minutes. Because of this, the 33-minute gap vanishes. Though I don't know how this happened. Why did Cocoro commit this error? This is the final mystery. First mystery. Number 2, when my consciousness went into Cocoro's body, I immediately noticed it. I was feeling out of place, and it was simple to understand that the one reflected in the mirror wasn't me. Also, I could freely control her body. I could move, talk, and essentially make full use of my 5 senses. And yet when I was in Alpha's body, I felt nothing. At least I don't remember anything. It's probably the same for Cocoro. Why? Why did Cocoro and I never observe anything through Alpha's eyes? Walking around, touching anything, eating something, hearing sounds, smelling. Why couldn't we do any of that? My memories simply skip over and go straight to the shelter cabin as if Alpha's body never existed. It doesn't make sense. This concludes the second mystery. Mystery number 3. The third is about where and when the third region exists. Where in the world is it? And when was it dragged into the space-time transfer? Arasaki Island, January 2012, Mount Cocoro, January 2011. What about the third area? Since Arasaki Island and Mount Cocoro exist at different points in time, it's natural to assume the third region exists in the past or in the future. If I can pinpoint its location at time, I will be able to draw closer to the identity of Alpha. Mystery number 4. The last mystery is about Alpha themselves. Who is Alpha? My consciousness transfers into 3 bodies while chasing after Alpha. However, I'm never caught up with them. When I finally arrive at the third area, Alpha runs to the shelter cabin. When I reach the shelter cabin, Alpha evades by going to Sphere. If you think about it, Alpha is very close existence to me, but I can't guess their true colors. Speaking of what I know, it's all the evil they did running around in my body. Alpha killed Enomoto, plunged themselves into the bathtub, drank up the DMT and inhibitor, and made a mess of the living area. Everything was done after Cocoro had left my body and right before I had returned to my body. The Alpha personality that wedged itself between Cocoro and me is the root of every calamity and the true evil. Criminal. Criminal? Yeah, criminal. Incidentally, I wonder why they did these things. What's their motive? Scheming to injure my body and merely butchering Enomoto's corpse, what are the reasons? Fourth mystery, Alpha. Strangely enough, I didn't feel any anger towards the unknown entity. Rather, I was fascinated by their mystique. They're scheming to injure my body, but does Alpha really have some sort of goal? But merely butchering Enomoto's corpse too was the person conscious of what they were doing. Whimsical and chaotic, the results of an innocent child at play. I began to realize Alpha's identity, if only vaguely. At any rate, with this I can say I proved Cocoro's my innocence, right? Let's be relieved with that one. In the corner of my mind, a fragment of discomfort still clung. Feeling I couldn't identify it, but it made me feel sick. Couldn't stop feeling uneasy about Alpha in the third area. Can't afford to lose sleep over it. I have another important errand to run. That is rescuing the refugees in the shelter cabin. Present time, 4:09. Space-time transfers approaching moment by moment. To change the mood, I brewed another cup of coffee and gulped it down. I left the cup on the console. A map was next to it. Same map of Japan I saw when I came into this room for the first time. Thinking it might come into use later, I thrust it into my pocket. The monitors lined up along the wall were reflecting the current situation in every room. Nothing was wrong with the other 3 inmates. After quickly checking on them, I left the dim room. Okay, I'm gonna go back, because that was clearly the wrong one. That was way over. But I'm about to do something worse. I am going to see what the 4 exchange points one is. We transfer 4 times. It's complicated, so let's use my body as the fixed point of view, and follow the transfers in chronological order. At the start, my own conscious is in my body. Nothing wrong about this, everything's normal. And the third personality enters my body and begins to move however they please. After 16.5 minutes on one half of 33, it's Cocoro's turn. Cocoro can stay at Sphere for 33 minutes. After she runs out of time, the third personality comes along for another ride. After 16.5 minutes, in the end my consciousness returns to my body, and this marks the end of the first set of transfers. In other words, I divided the time interval of 33 minutes in 2 halves, each before and after. Strange, something doesn't click. I wasn't fully satisfied with the explanation, but oh well. Anyway, that's how it is. Cocoro and I transferred 4 points in time. Furthermore, during the 33-minute gap, my body was injured and Enomoto was killed. Consequently, the real culprit is the third personality. With this, Cocoro's my innocence was proved. The records tell me everything. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and left that musty room. That was all? Wow. It's the 2 exchange points, though, obviously. I don't think there's a third one, because it just doesn't make sense. Also, this time thing, I don't understand. I don't remember the times. 2 exchange. There are 2 exchange points, I'm sure of it. Then how do I go explaining the existence of a third personality? Very simple. The personality lurks within myself. I'd always thought that Cocoro and I were the only ones controlling my body, but that doesn't seem to be in the case. There's someone else within me, someone I don't know. My memory still hasn't returned. If we assume the cause is mental, then it means something's wrong with my mind. Just like Katsumi said, maybe I really do suffer from DID. And while suffering from DID, I was dragged into the transference phenomenon, thus I misunderstood. Until now, I was convinced I was taking the role of the victim, but I was wrong. I am the victim and also the assailant. Unbeknownst to even me, because of a mental disorder completely unrelated to the transference phenomenon, I've created another personality within myself. That other personality must have been the culprit. He schemed to injure my body and grotesquely killed Inamoto. The records tell me everything. It's sad, but I have to face up to it. I won't waver anymore. I won't let myself be restrained by feelings and obligations any longer. I closed my eyes, took a heavy breath, and left the musty room. Yeah, I believe that one. I believe it's a second personality. Not due to the phenomenon, but actually just mentally. And I think it's the original Satoru. Just when he fell, he didn't get hit by amnesia, he got just another personality. Maybe he had it to begin with, I don't know. But yeah, I think it's the original Satoru.